Well, hello again and welcome back. This is the last of the modules for the roadmap for the future. I again am Rich Shane and I'm glad to be joined here with.
My name is Andy Saptono.
And like I said, this is the roadmap for the future. And so today's module, we hope that the participants will be able to identify 2 barriers for which telehealth can address proceeding with mobility, along with identifying 2 key stakeholders involved in the telehealth proceeding mobility application itself. So where we wanted to kick off first is with a specific reference point. And this is one specific article that I think is really integral in any kind of telehealth implementation. It's called Telehealth, the Good, the Bad, and the Lovely Crossing the Telehealth Chasm. And this specific article really addresses the barriers that look at telemedicine adoption. And they go into, from the technological perspective, financial, legal, business strategy, along with the human factors. And again, this is done by LaRouge and Garfield. So specifically looking at the barriers itself. So when we look at the business strategy, I know that this is a busy slide. We won't hit on all the key points, but just to make inferences on certain elements related to how seeing mobility could be done. So from a business strategy, this is where we were talking a little bit before about culture and organizational change and finding specific champions like yourselves who are all watching this, who want to make an impact in using or implementing telehealth in their mobility prescription. And so you also may want to look at how you are training specific staff, training the clinicians and other individuals from a business perspective. When we look at the human factors area, you want to make this from an awareness standpoint. How are you going to disseminate information? How are you going to receive individuals into the specific service? So making sure that there is interest in what you are doing, or it's probably not worth doing at all anyway. And so you really want to make sure that you have the backing of the community as well. So from a technological perspective, I may let Andy kind of hit on a couple of these key points as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of key points here, but remember, technology needs maintenance. So technology and financial usually needs to go hand in hand. There needs to be, as Rich mentioned, reasoning why telerehab is appropriate. And that reasoning can lead to a financial sustainability that can allow the technology to be there. So these are hand in hand.
And again, just to make sure we touch on from a financial standpoint, making sure that you know what your return on investment is, making sure you're accountable for the variable costs that are going to be associated with implementation. And from a legal standpoint, making sure that you're up to date on all those friendly regulations and licensures that support within your professional organization. So evaluating the telehealth experience. So now that you have all these areas, how are you going to systematically roll out the actual implementation itself? So what are you going to look at in terms of your outcomes? Outcomes could be from a quality improvement. You can be looking at reducing costs, improving provider and patient satisfaction. It could be functional tasks associated with the mobility prescription itself. So there's a very large amount of different outcomes that could be looked at here. Right. But what you want to look at is what is specific that you want to encompass into your actual organization.
Yeah. There is also a possibility of social impact as well that can be measured.
Absolutely. And so once you kind of designed and what you're going to be rolling out is, then how are you going to share those specific findings and selecting, the appropriate recipients, whether it's presenting at different conferences, making case study analysis. These are all important elements when you're evaluating a telehealth experience. But again, you also want to make sure that you are willing to modify the program, because usually the first iteration of what you're going to do, you always want to make sure you're able to pivot. And pivot is very integral when you're doing telehealth, because you want to evaluate the frequency of what you're doing.
Right. Just want to share a roadmap for digital equity that has been published at the Journal of American Medicine Association. And this is a wonderful, wonderful reading if you want to start planning out for the future for the telerehab as well. And a lot of the things that is discussed is how we need to engage the stakeholders in the telerehab and getting them to participate, to act, to ensure the roadmap for the future of the telerehab can actually happen. So from the perspective of the clients and the caregivers, we want them to actively advocate about telerehab and to participate in the program development and research. And Rich, probably you can talk about the clinician side.
Yeah, so from the clinicians and the assistive technology professionals, that could be clinicians and or suppliers, that we want to make sure that they're doing creative and innovative modes that are different protocols, establishing kind of their own personal touch on how they want to implement something, making sure you're collecting those specific outcome measures. Having HIPAA compliant software is going to be very critical as well. And just supporting one another in your endeavors, making sure that you're aware of what is actually happening as well. So maybe having future collaborations as well.
And I'm not going to talk about the roles for everybody, but think about the policymakers. What can we do to engage them so that they support their rehab? Educators, maybe to integrate some of the curriculum into what they're educating so that the new students, the new professionals will be familiar with the telehealth from the get-go. And of course, researchers. We always want the researchers to continue to push for the envelope so that we can continue the progress for the telerehab in the future as well. So,
and we want to thank you again for your time. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Rich.
And again, our contact information is here. We look forward to the additional modules, and please enjoy the rest of the telehealth online certificate program. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, everyone.